Hello, everybody. How y'all doing today? I'm back. It's been quite a while since I did one of these DM streams. Took a little bit of time off as we were trying to figure out a few things with our scheduling. But I thought I'd jump back into it because it's been too long. So if you're there, feel free to jump into our chat. I'd love to kind of move this around, whatever you all are finding interesting or whatever questions you might have about D&D or tabletop role-playing games or just myself. Whatever you like. Yeah, I think that's about all I have to say about that. As a reminder, for those of you that may or may not know, we also have our here we go. Also have our Tuesday session, D&D session. We do it every Tuesday. We play our campaign in the homebrew world of Cormoril right here on Twitch, Instagram, YouTube. You can find them at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard. So come back tomorrow. You get to see us play. Yeah, it's map time. Hello, Moon Jelly Magic. Good to see you in the chat there. 100%. It's map time. I got to figure out what I'm doing here. I have pulled up Dungeon Draft. Dungeon Draft is the program that I use to make my maps. You can kind of do whatever you want to do with your maps. There's so many different great ways to make maps. I'm just a big fan of, what do you call it? Hello, oh, Green Monkey Lover's on. Hey, how's it going? Good to see you too. Over there on Instagram. Let's see, I'm gonna pull up something here. I'm gonna see. Hey, nerd, what did I put here? Oh, you know what? I made a little map. I forgot about this map that I may or may not ever use. I love putting things together to just kind of see what it would be like if I were to turn this into some sort of combat, or even if it was just going to be a city map or something along those lines. So I built this out using a bunch of prefabricated buildings. So these are all buildings that exist in some of the software that I've purchased for this Dungeon Draft. This all come from Crossroads, which is our Crosshair studio. Sorry, Crosshair, which is a studio that makes all the assets, or a lot of the assets that I use when I'm building maps. And these are some prefabricated buildings that they've made using those same assets. And I will say that this guy makes some pretty amazing things, including, like, you can see the shadow behind this chair. It really looks like this fireplace is like casting that shadow. You can see it also here underneath the what do you call this thing? A little table, so on and so forth. They've built this out to really give you that three-dimensional depth that this program can sometimes naturally lack a little bit. Yes, every building can be a brothel. I didn't make any of these buildings, so they're all, I think, pretty much all residents. I don't know if a single one of these is any kind of public building. Sorry. Yeah, these all look like residential, like just houses to this guy for the most part. But yeah, lots of really cool lighting stuff that this person at Crosshairs does. So I forgot what this map was, why I started building it, but here you go. Here's a fun little map I made, apparently. Let's see, what else do I got here? Let's see here. You're getting ads, but you haven't seen them in the last 4 hours. we have ads on our channel because of just trying to turn this into a little bit more of a profession, a job. But other people might not have ads running. It really depends on if they are partners or not. We are affiliates on Twitch. So as an affiliate, that means that we kind of like part of it is that we have to run ads. We can disable them if we want, but if we want this to make any money for our streams moving forward, which we put back into the stream itself with better equipment, cool new assets for the map building, as well as being able to give this stuff back to our audience. We also gift subs and all kinds of fun things. So that's just a little bit of why you might see an ad on our channel that you didn't see on other people's. Let's see here. So this right here is a map that my party went into a little while back. The more I build maps, the more I'm like working on adventure or like encounter building. The more I want to give them a variety of encounters. At the beginning, I was focusing mainly on combat encounters, so it was all different rooms that would have enemies in them. Think of cool, exciting ways to give those enemies or the party some cover. Some of them maybe don't have cover. Big areas where areas of effect can possibly either get trapped in a certain section or expand over a large area. So it's something like in this map, this whole area, which I think you can see. Oop. Let's see here. Yeah, this whole area here was for an encounter. This is for a combat. So I wanted to give them the ability to hide behind corners, to have enemies be able to kind of like either go through walls. I had a couple of like ghost specters, things that could come straight out of the wall at someone, go back through the wall, and then the party would have to run around corners in order to get back to them in this area. But then I created other kinds of encounters. For instance, in this long hallway over here, this section was one long like trap puzzle. So coming up one side was part of that trap. There was like spinning blades. When they get around the corner, there was going to be some like pillars coming out of the ceiling trying to smush them. And then at the very end was a rune of fear, so they were pushed back. If they got to the end, they'd have to get a wisdom saving throw. So if they get afraid of the rune, and then would get pushed back into the pillars if they failed that save. So this was like a whole puzzle of them trying to figure out how to get past the end of this room and into this next chamber down here. I created another little like encounter in this room, which was all about trying to figure out some stuff from the lore of my world. So there was like a whole word search, a little bit of like introduction into who the gods, the pantheon are. Whoops. So I gave them a little bit of like history on all that. So it's all about giving them a variety. I feel like the more interesting stuff you have for your party, the better it is in the long run. If it's all combat or it's all puzzles or whatever it is, if you get a little too bogged down in one style, people can get a little stagnated. It gets a little boring. So I like to try and change things up, give people other chances, other things to go through. One of the other, oh, hello, someone driving past the house. This is one of my bigger maps that I've made. This is the castle for Unadinos, the big city that the party is in right now in our current campaign. This castle I spent probably a few of the sessions where I was doing these DM talks, building building this castle. And then I spent probably another 10, 15 hours outside of that continuing it. So this one gets fairly intricate. Nothing is prefabrication. It's all stuff that I've built from scratch, including so I have these like wavy pathways, like a storage rooms, this whole garden area. I have a couple of different like guard rooms here, another storeroom, walls all around it, a little patio out front, and then the big main castle itself. And then on top of that, this castle has a basement, a second floor here, and then below that is also a dungeon. So this is a multi-leveled, layered building with a lot of stuff to explore. This is the first one that I've built. So many plants, I know. I definitely put a lot of like trees and gardens and all kinds of fun stuff here, as well as on the second floor I put a couple of little house plants and flower boxes out front, so trying to liven it up a little bit. Yeah, so when building thanks Green Thumb. Oh. When building a bigger dungeon like this, there's a couple of things that I always want to keep in mind. One of the big things is, of course, how am I going to use this in the campaign itself? Like, how is this going to help enrich the story or entertain my party? So a lot of that is just, what cool rooms are there for them to explore, as well as what kind of encounters can I imagine in these rooms. So I've said to some people who've asked me about building these kinds of things in the past, I come at it from two different angles. I usually start off by writing out what I'm planning with the story a little bit. So I will build out, for instance, in this area, there's I'm trying to conclude a couple of different character storylines. So there are 4 player characters in this campaign, all of which have gotten to a point in their personal stories where it's a tipping point. They got to make some choices. They got to get to some points of no return. And in order for that to feel big and epic, in my opinion, I feel like the best way is to make sure that they have like a whole area, a whole dungeon for themselves. This is an area that is focused on one particular player. So for instance, this castle I kind of imagine as being, there's a player in our campaign named Bugsby P. Cadwallader, who is a prince who has not had the best of luck when it comes to how he is treated and how he behaves in the nobility circles. So I started building out this castle kind of as an ode to Bugsby's sphere of life and where he came from before he became an adventurers. I wanted to make sure that he had something that really pulled him back to his roots, because for 20-30 sessions we have not really existed in the areas where Bugsby grew up and became who he is now. And now it's fun to go back and see him interacting with the people that made him into who he was at the beginning of the campaign. So that was kind of my first thoughts when building all this. And you might have something similar if you're a DM or if you're a player, to realize that a lot of this stuff gets more exciting the more it's connected to the players themselves and what it was that drew them to their characters in the first place. Anywho, this one right here, the next I was going over why I build the dungeons I build. So after knowing that I wanted something that had to do with Bugsby's past, his history of being a noble, and that's what makes him who he is, I had to start building out a story a little bit. What's going to bring the characters here story-wise, and how does that make fun interactions? So I started developing kind of a whole dinner with the Duke and the nobles of the city, where Bugsby and the party could start to interact with some of these nobles, see what kind of people they really are, as well as give them some tasks, some things that they're trying to accomplish while they're here. Some of these things worked better than others when it all came to actually playing the game. But the more layers and the more choices that people have, the more invested they become. So I'm always trying to think of choices that players could make, things in the game that I feel like will excite somebody, something that they've been asking for, something that they've talked about in passing in old sessions. They'll bring up something that maybe is just a throwaway line, but if you as the DM, or if I as the DM, can bring that back later and make that feel like, oh no, that really was something important, or that you had every right to feel that way because you were right, it makes it all that better. So the next thing is to kind of figure out what each room in this dungeon is there for. I tend to start by figuring out why I'm building the dungeon in the first place. Then I move to start figuring out what it is I want to accomplish in the dungeon. Then I usually will build out the dungeon to some degree. And then I'll start looking at each individual room and make sure that there's a purpose for every room there. This one, I was just having so much fun building a castle that I don't have in our campaign very thought out encounters in each room. I did have probably 6 or 7 encounters that the party could have run into throughout the dinner, but they weren't locked down to any particular room. I also had, I began to lay out an order of operations, how that dinner party was going to happen over the course of the entire evening, where everyone was going to start, where they were going to move next, what kinds of conversations I needed the nobles to have amongst each other, as well as why the Duke called them all in for the first place. Ooh, got some gift subs. Thank you so much, everybody. It's fantastic to see you all here playing around with us. Welcome. Pita Bread. I haven't seen you in a while. Matthias. I feel like I used to see you guys in my streams here in the past, so it's great to see you again. This is great. If you have any questions for me, just toss them right up there in the... Ooh. Yeah, toss them right up there in the chat. I'm both on Instagram, Twitch, and I have YouTube all up right here on my screen, so you can feel free to chat with me, and I'm more than happy to go over my reasonings for anything that I've done, or what I might do in a situation that you might be dealing with. Let's see here. Yeah, so I had planned out like this whole dinner in this area that was for the party to kind of like watch unfold, including starting everybody kind of in this outside patio area, have them talking amongst the different nobles, figuring out, oh man, another sub. Thank you so much, everybody. You guys rock out there. Ooh, my goodness, we got a little hype train going on over here. This is great. Oh man, Yeah. So, do I have any specific approach to creating campaigns that newer players can get accustomed to how to play and the basics? I would say that there's nothing that like I specifically do to try and create a welcoming environment for newer players. But I would say that the first probably 3 levels of Dungeons and Dragons are designed to be almost a I want to say prequel, but that's not the word I'm looking for. It's the tutorial levels. You know, those are those first 3 levels, 1, 2, and 3, are really there to teach players how the game works. And the nice thing about Dungeons and Dragons is that, and any TTRPG really, um, is that all the players are working together. So if you have a couple of players that are new and the rest know what they're doing, then all you have to do is give them an inviting environment where it is okay for them to try anything they want to try. You just let them know. If you can imagine it, if you want to do something, you can always ask. Say, oh, I want to explore that. You describe this thing and I want to see that. Like, maybe say that out loud to your party so that they have a chance to realize that it's okay for them to say, oh, what was that thing that you described? And then you go, oh, you want to head over that way? And then everyone can pop on over. Um, as far as like the basics of D&D go, and creating that environment to help them learn how to play, I always find that they always say there's the 3 pillars of Dungeons and Dragons, which is combat, exploration, and roleplay. Which means that in that first session that you play with your party, you want to make sure that you not only make sure that there are all 3 of those aspects in your game, but make sure that every single one of them you are describing how that usually works and giving them that invite to join you in playing along with all that kind of stuff. So I find that the hardest pillar of that is, I mean, it depends on your party really and what they come from. Combat is one of the most rules like dense part of the game, but as long as one person understands the rules, all you have to do is tell them, oh, you can attack or you can cast one of these couple spells. I recommend newer players play don't be spellcasters as much, but the new player handbook actually has in it a little breakdown of all the different player classes and how difficult they are to play. So you can kind of give a new player that little insight of, hey, the easiest characters to play are going to be like barbarians, fighters, maybe rogues, and then you get a little bit more difficult once you start adding some spell casting into it. And by the time you get to something like wizards, you have to really understand the rules in order to make sure that you can weave your way through them. But honestly, D&D is designed to level up so slowly that by the time you figure out by the time that you figure out what you're doing with that one level, they add one more rule, one more new little thing, making it just a little bit more complicated each time as it goes. Let's see here. It says the hardest for new players in my experience is either exploration or social, since newer players tend to be more timid. Having experienced player dragging them in helps a lot. Yes, the more you have those players that help out, the better. If you're playing with an entirely green party, a party that's never played the game before, I find that the biggest thing to do is to tell them, or to like show them the little ways in which they can interact. So that starts off with giving them examples, saying, oh, you enter this room, you see around you a dim dungeon, a couple of lights that are giving off an eerie green glow, and you have, a treasure chest at the back of the room. What do you want to do? So you give them that pause where they can then interact with it. If they don't know what they can do, you can give them some examples. What do you want to check out the lights and figure out why they're glowing that eerie green glow? You can take a look at the walls, and maybe there's a door you can try to open. You can check out the treasure chest, and that way it gives them little ways that they can start walking out into this world that you've created for them. The more that you as the DM understand the rules and tell them what they can do, the more that they'll begin to, little by little, start taking those little baby steps, and eventually you'll have them running along with you in excitement, fun. At least that's been my experience. Are you for hire? Be willing to create a custom tailored campaign and DM it for myself and a group of friends. A mixed experience of tabletop gaming. Yeah, I'm always happy to play. And yes, I I have started doing some DMing for new groups and little one-shots and small adventures. And I would be more than happy to talk to you about that. If you want to send a private message, a DM to me, either here or on Instagram, Vicious Camaraderie, I'd be more than happy to respond with that and give you some more information about what I usually do for people, and what I'd be willing and happy to do for you as well. Because I love exploring this game with more people, and I always feel like the more people there are in the hobby, the better the hobby is. So there's always room to show some new people how to play, to get you and your group of friends going, and creating a little custom tailored campaign, because I love making sure that each individual person that is in that campaign is happy to be there. Has something specifically tailored to them. Hello, Killer7 Gamer, how you doing? This is great, guys. Keep if you have any more questions for me, continue that chat down there in the chat section. I'm more than happy to keep answering. Okay, hard question. Okay, I know how I do it, but I want to see you do it. How do you deal with NPCs that lie? Perception checks shouldn't be lie detection if they just mention. If they just met. But what do you do if they roll like an 18 versus a plausible lie? So that is an awesome question. Now she, yeah, I would love that. Thank you. Sorry, back to you, Chaos Fox. So perception checks, or in this case, I would definitely do an whoop. I am really bad with names of stuff, so I always have to have something in front of me that tells me. I always would do an insight check for when it comes to lies over perception. Perception works because you'd be able to perceive certain details. But essentially, when it comes to all this kind of stuff, I would say insight when it comes to people, and if they're lying, and understanding them. If they roll perception and say, I would like to roll perception, I always let them. But then all they're going to get is the kinds of details like, oh, this person, his eyes keep kind of shifting back and forth as they speak this, or you see them kind of shifting their weight, stuff like that, that might say, oh, they might be lying. And insight check is going to give you that a little bit more of like the specific, oh, this person looks uncomfortable. They look like they maybe they keep kind of looking off to the side, and you see that they're looking at, you know, the noble in the corner, and you realize, oh, perhaps that means that they are being like instructed to say this by that person. I'm never gonna say straight up it's a lie, or what they intend instead, like what, like, oh, they said this, but what they really mean is this. All I'm gonna give my players is a little bit of like, I'm gonna give them that idea that this person seems like they are very earnest, or it seems like they might be lying, and if there's any connection to other people in the room, something they're looking at, if you say, oh, do you know where this is? And they say no, and then you roll that really good insight check, and you see that when they said no, they grasped their bag at their side, that might help imply to the party that they do know where it is and it's in their bag. Stuff like that. Making magic items. Let's see. That's true. You wouldn't know. So sorry, Chaos Fox followed this up with if they have insight on someone they just met, you don't have a baseline for how they normally look or talk. And essentially, I find that the better you know someone, the easier, or rather, the more information I might give the party about that insight check. If they roll really high and they've just met this person, then all I'm going to give them is the kind of information that most people behave. And there's like certain interpersonal things that are commonly accepted as indications for lies and, indication for someone telling the truth. Things like perspiring, shifting, eyes going up to the corner are all indications that somebody might be making something up. That being said, if they're telling the truth, it's going to be a little bit harder to tell. If they're a very good liar, it might be a little bit harder to tell. And if they know the character and this person is lying, then there's a lot of like specific things that you can say, oh, this person does this and you're watching them do this other thing instead. Help give them a little more indication that they're lying. But no, these are good points, and every DM can do this differently. I'd like to know how you do it, Chaos Fox. What do you do if they just met the person? Do you give them less information? Do you give them no information? Is there a limit on when they can do insight checks or perception checks? Personally, if someone isn't possible to do, if something isn't possible to do, I don't have them roll. Oh yeah, that is one of the big things. If it's not possible, don't let them roll. If they're gonna roll and it turns out they never had a chance, then why did they roll in the first place? That is a big it's one of the rules of DMing. And just like anything else, all rules can be broken if you feel like it's worth it. But that's the baseline normal rule. If it's not possible for them to get the information, don't let them roll. Just let them know. This guy is very difficult to read. It doesn't seem like you would ever really be able to pick up that information. Unless, I don't know, you got to know him a little more. I like that. It's not usually the way I run my games, because I like to incentivize people to roll. But every DM has their own strengths, has their own things that they enjoy, have their things that they don't enjoy. And if that works for you in your games, then that is perfect. That is the exact way that you should be doing it. And I think that's part of the greatest part of this game, is that it doesn't really matter what one person doesn't necessarily translate to the next person. You'll find as you run your games something that works for you, and then run with it. That's perfect. If it works for you, then that is the way you should do it. Let's see here. Killer7 Gamer said, how do you normally go about making magic items and homebrew weapons? I have a rogue in my campaign who wants to use chopsticks as throwing weapons and to match his background, but I don't know how to make them for him. I don't just want to have a copy of Dagger. For the most part, improvised weapons, which chopsticks would be, you as the DM literally do, or it says in the DMG that is what you should do. You should basically mimic another item, maybe changing the damage type or the die that they might roll, depending on what kind of damage you think that item really would deal. So you might say, oh, this is like, if it's chopsticks, that's a pretty weak weapon. Like, they might break when you try to stab someone with them, unless you stab them in just the right place. If they're made of metal, maybe they're metal chopsticks, and then they're a little bit more durable and they can behave more like a dagger. But chopsticks aren't sharp, so maybe they would deal bludgeoning damage. Or maybe you'd give them the option to kind of choose what kind of damage that it deals. Maybe if they hit them on the side, that's a bludgeoning blow, and it's a D4. It's a real weak bludgeoning. But if they roll, 5 over the AC, then they can stab with it, and they have to find that really perfect place. So that's why it's, you add that extra 5, and then they can roll a D8 or something instead, because a chopstick going all the way in somewhere would be really dangerous. But if you're going to add those kinds of rules where it's specific for different weird specific stuff like that, I would recommend that both you as the DM and the player be okay with that. My point being that the more rules you add, the more intricacies you add to your homebrew stuff, the more stuff you have to remember. And by the time you get to level 5, 10, 15, you're already trying to remember so many different rules, so many different things. Our campaign right now is at level 9, and already every combat, at least one of us, if not all of us, and usually me, forget some rule somewhere down the line. And you go, oh shoot, I should have been doing this. Oh, I could have done that, and I forgot that it existed because I have so much stuff going on in my head. And my recommendation is don't overload yourself unless you know you can handle it. So for the most part, I would probably just copy something that you think is similar. This rogue uses chopsticks. Copy it as a dagger. Maybe because it fits something in their backstory, or you want them to have something a little bit more powerful than a dagger, you can say something along the lines of, you are so good with chopsticks, you can always find that perfect opening where you can actually stab and break skin, or break apart the armor a little bit, or whatever it is that deals actual damage. And those chopsticks are going to deal D6 instead. Something like that. Oh, Kobold Press has some great books. You're absolutely right, Chaos Fox. Yes. When in doubt, too, if you're going to go beyond just like the basic rules, Chaos Fox there has got the right idea. Going into one of these books, Kobold Press has some amazing material, and there's a ton of stuff that they've have published over the years. I recommend taking a look and see if you see something better in that than you saw in the player handbook, or some homebrew website, or like D&D Beyond. You can look on homebrew and see what people have voted, upvoted, downvoted, etc. But something that's been published, that they've taken the time to make sure it works. Hit Point Press has a few new Griffin books, but not seen the book 2 yet. No. But yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff out there, not just from Wizards of the Coast, but yes, Chaos Fox, you know your stuff. I will say that once again, I find the most important thing is to find what works for you and do that. When in doubt, finding something a little bit on the simpler side is going to be better for you all in the long run. If you find that there is something that you think would be very important, that you go a little above and beyond, give them one more extra thing, taking a look at different published materials to get ideas, will help you develop something that you think is going to work in your campaign. Something that works for D&D generally. Other things to keep in mind, though, is to take a look at how powerful it would be compared to other weapons. You want to make sure that if your person would be using a simple weapon or a martial weapon, that it kind of corresponds with what's in that player handbook version of those. And if you're going to give it extra features that are beyond that, to keep in mind that there are guidelines in the Dungeon Master Guide. You can find amongst other materials, I'm sure, as well, that go over how much more powerful something should be compared to the level of the player. So like one thing is the Dungeon Master Guide goes over like the rarity of an item if it was like a magic item by player level. So you shouldn't be giving your level 1 character these like rare style magic items or something that would deal the same amount of damage as a rare magic item. You want to give them something more like an uncommon style magic item. Keep in mind that just giving a magic item the ability to like what do you call it, deal more damage would essentially put it into the +1 +2 magic item style place, and that's when you're getting into uncommon, rare, very rare style items. VNDM's right. Oh yeah, I mean we all mess up, you know, like that's something that happens, and honestly, your players will forgive you, or at least mine have so far. Chaos Fox saying he doesn't like bags of holding, alchemist jugs, or removable rods. I will say I pretty much always give my party a bag of holding, but that's because my party, we tend to play without encumbrance rules, and I like having the idea of something that can help them not be encumbered, that feels like it would work in world. But I see where you're coming from. Alchemist jugs. So find a druid with flying animals. Yeah, alchemist jugs are one of those ones that seem like they have there's no way to actually make them like combat effective. It would just be something to, I don't know, hand out beer to everyone that you walk by. Or you need some oil, like, oh, there's a never-ending fountain of oil, but my goodness, they there are ways for alchemist jugs to just mess up everything if they figure out how to use it in the right circumstance. Oh, so Chaos Fox, I don't know. So bags of holding don't ever change weight no matter what you have in them. Technically speaking, every single item goes into its own interdimensional space. There's a certain amount of weight that it can hold overall, but the weight of the bag itself shouldn't ever change. But you can empty the bag. Oh, and it costs an action from what I understand. I'll have to look this up, but I believe it costs an action to pull any item out of the bag. So you shouldn't be able to just flip it upside down and empty the contents. But once again, all these rules are really more guidelines, and anyone, like, if you decide that this is the way it works in your campaign, then there are awesome things that you can do with that. And like you said, Chaos Fox, there are some horrendous things you can do with that might break the game. So it's like you just got to find those balances. If you as the DM feel like that would break the game, then you got to figure out, one, are you just going to ban that item or make sure that doesn't show up? You as the DM, you get to put whatever magic items you want in your game, or not. No one can run across a magic item unless you let them. But those are the kinds of things that I try to think through. So if, for instance, yeah, you have this amazing scenario that I wonder, did it happen to you at one point? Because that's a crazy, really smart item. It's 1d6 per 10 feet, making, yeah, 20d6 times the amount of rocks. Yeah, you're absolutely right. If they were able to turn that bag, Turn back into a druid. Empty the bag over the enemy. 500 pounds from 3,000 feet is a d6 per 10 feet, making it 20 d6 times the amount of rocks. That is a crazy, insane amount of damage. But that's why in my party, or my campaigns when I run it, you can't just turn it upside down and empty the contents. You have to actively, with some intelligence, recall an item out of the bag. If you don't know the item's in there, you can't recall it, and it's just stuck, it gets lost in the void forever. If you know the bag is full of nothing but rocks, it takes an action. So basically, theoretically, you could drop one rock per round as an action, dealing 20 d6 damage. But keep in mind, if you're 3,000 feet over the encounter, you don't know if that's again. You can always just turn it inside out. Yeah. Yeah. And once again, that's why, you know, I guess the rule that I have is homebrewed. Pull that item up. You said you just turn it inside out and to pull everything out. I mean, pull it open, because you're absolutely right. I mean, or rather, I'm sure you're right. Let's see here. I'm very noisy. Yeah, you can turn it inside out. Interesting. So the interesting thing is that I have always played that in order to pull an item out of the bag of holding, it would essentially cost your action or bonus action, depending on what the item is. But it doesn't say that in the rules. This Jugs breaks economy because of the... Yeah. I feel like so many different items can just absolutely break your game. But that's why, as the DM, there's also a rule, or rather, I always tell my party that if we decide something's kind of broken or is not working, we always want to go back and revisit it and make sure we fix it so it does work. So if, for instance, someone came up with this amazing idea of turning into a duck, flying up 3,000 feet and dumping 500 pounds of rocks, dealing 20 d6 across this whole area, that's a level 9 spell. That's essentially, at this point, you're doing, you call it meteor storm or something, if not more. There's all kinds of ways as the DM to go through that and figure out if it really does work. One, my homebrew rule's always been, you can't just dump it out. But you're right, rules is written, it says you can do that. So then what else can we do to make sure that it doesn't absolutely break the game? You just do that every time. And then you start thinking through things like, well, 3,000 feet in the air, or, you know, maybe not 3,000 feet. Highest you can go would essentially be what? 200 feet? 200 feet would deal the max damage of 20 d6. And you say, okay, well, at 200 feet, how much wind is there now? How likely would it be that this bag of rocks falls actually on an enemy? Because you gotta, what, if you just drop them directly overhead, are they going to actually hit the enemy? Maybe one of them hits. Maybe the enemy has to make a dexterity saving throw, but it's going to be a low save. Like I only, it's going to be it's going to be what, a dex saving throw, difficulty of 10 or something like that, for them to get out of the way of these rocks. Because you got to keep in mind, it's going to take time for those rocks to drop that amount of distance. How many rounds does it take? By that time, is the combat over? So think through stuff like that. But the easiest thing to do is to talk to your players. Let's see. I don't think the DM Empire will forgive us in the game we're currently playing, as we worked out. Because the second shift he made 1 second in the mansion where the boss lives is 14 minutes outside of it. So we can leave mid-fight, get a full long rest, gather our resources for the day, and go back in at night. And the boss has had a 5-minute rest. And we can also have the villagers making stuff for us for a month while we're in there, so that the boss just sees us pop up, fight 45 minutes later, and 5 minutes later come back with a month worth of supplies, well rested. Oh man. I mean, I enjoyed the creativity. I think I'd be frustrated if I was the DM in that campaign, but hey, in my opinion, the DM did it to himself, right? And then you can try it again. Good players, because you can do it. Exactly. If a player can do it, the enemy can too. So that's the other thing. Why doesn't the boss, if you're gone for 5 minutes, why don't they also leave for 5 minutes? You come back to an empty whatever it is, we say castle, mansion. He comes back in a minute later, and he's also had a long rest. Like, if you can do it, so can the boss, right? It's instant. That got faster than you move. Raw is 100,000 foot in the air, and you'll hit the ground in 1 turn. Prefer Looney Tune rules, yeah. Oh man, Chaos Fox. That I think is one of the best things I've ever seen. I prefer the Looney Tune rules too. Oh man, you don't know how many times, Killer 7 Gamer, I have done the same. Where I'm like, I threw out something random, the party exploited it, and now I'm at a loss as to what I'm supposed to be doing here. I can't leave. Oh man. Well, it sounds like you figured out how to break that encounter then. I hope that wasn't the end of the campaign, because that sounds like a real rough one. But I don't know why. Yeah, in that case, I mean, as the DM, you're never gonna think through every scenario. But hopefully, if for instance there's like timey-wimey wobbly stuff going on in your campaign, you could always block certain kinds of magic. Maybe teleportation is wonky in that area, and you can only come or go through a teleportation circle or through certain portals, in which case the party can't just leave mid-combat. Once you get to those high levels, though, D&D as a whole, I won't say broken, but it's difficult as a DM. If the party can teleport, I'm assuming that you got to be, what, level 12, 15, something like that. And that's when it really starts to get difficult to figure out all the different ways that the party might be able to break that encounter. You can't leave. Yeah. So that's the joy of DMing, and I feel like the higher level you get, the more you really have to think about all this stuff. And it's why Chaos Fox was recommending. Bye, Nicole. It's one of the players in the campaign back there, leaving for the day. As a reminder, we play D&D every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard. So if you want to see us actually play, get a little bit of a feel of how I DM, pop on over. I'm sure I would love to see you all then. But yeah, so the other thing is, as Chaos Fox was saying, this is why they tend to want to check out Kobold Press or other kinds of already published materials, because the more you homebrew it, the more potential you haven't thought of that one thing that can break your game. It's only started the campaign. It was to free the first island as this boss is dead. You can't leave the island, so killing these is what frees up the rest of the world. Okay, so this is like the tutorial area. How are you actually transporting your party out then? If you don't have high level magic? Are there just like teleportation circles and stuff all over this this mansion, or how are you getting out if the boss can't? That would be my question. All right, let's see here. Ooh, the rusty mug. This is a fun little combat that I made a while back, where the party ended up getting into a little fight with some guards that were checking out the Rusty Mug, a little like downtrodden pub in town. Finding out that this whole section of the guards had been kind of taken over, or were following the evil god that is arising in my campaign. And then they had to help protect the people that were staying at the Rusty Mug and get them out safely. By the time they went in, they spent a couple hours in there, and when they came back out, they found that a lot of the area had been surrounded, fortified. And they had to get all the way over to this sewer entrance over here. So that was a fun little event where they had to then cross this whole stage and come over here with a group of like 20 people. Wow, jump out. It's a curse that makes the boss trapped and unable to leave. Oh man. You can literally just climb the wall. Oh, row. It's Lloyd, the pup, is barking. Yeah, I mean, if you break one combat, I think all the power to you. It's if you break the whole way the game is supposed to play, that's when it gets really problematic. So like Chaos Fox was saying, you give someone a magic item, that magic item is just yours now, and you get to do it over and over and over again unless the DM can figure out a way to counter it, or if you can all come to an agreement that, hey, magic items don't work that way in this universe, or we can't, you know, we're going to change the rules a little bit because that's broken. I can't have you be dealing, you know, hundreds of D20s worth of damage at level 5 or whatever. So this is going to be the new rule. Whatever it is, it's okay to talk to your party about that stuff. And to make those kinds of changes. I think reward people for thinking creatively, but keep in mind that as a DM, your main job is to balance the game. So you got to make sure that everyone's having fun. And being able to just walk through any encounter, it's not the most fun thing in the world. You want to challenge, or at least that's what I want. That's what I think my players want. So it's, once again, should be, hopefully, okay to have some conversation about fixing problems as they arise. So maybe that means that your DM just needs to say, hey, next time, the walls are not going to be climbable. Like, I don't know. Or maybe he rearranges the next area. If you have like a bunch of these people that are trapped that you need to kill in order to get out of this trapped area, the next one won't have climbable walls. Like, whatever it is. You know, the next one's going to be in a cave. The next one's going to be in like the door seals shut behind you. So with a magical lock or something. Like, whatever it is. It's all about, as the DM, figuring those kinds of things out. Because if the players can break the game, so can you. As long as you do it within your own rules, right? As long as you're not breaking the rules. And if you are gonna have to change something, make sure everyone's on board. Like, those are the couple things that I always say. You don't want to, as a DM, ever feel like it's you against the players or vice versa. It's never the players against the DM. You're all in the same game together. It's all about having fun and this crazy adventure that you create together. But yeah. I'm so curious about how the bag of holding, I just totally missed it. That you couldn't pull out, and you can pull out as much as you want. You just turned it inside out. So interesting. These are things that I didn't know. Yeah, so it's interesting because there's a rule on Bag of Holdings that says that in order to pull an item out requires an action. But you can turn it inside out and all of its contents spill forth unharmed. And that is where the question lies. And I feel like that's where you gotta talk to your party about it. Oh yeah, Glyphs of Warding. Love Glyphs of Warning. But yeah, they're a pain. Yeah. Exactly. There's always ways to nerf it. Let's see, what else do I have here? Stacks of concentration. So let's see here. I'm sorry, I was having a. You were saying something about it stacks concentration. Oh, like you can have multiple concentration effects because it doesn't require concentration once you have a Glyph of warding, in it. Fly, haste, Trenzers, transformation on the same person. Turn 1. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, there's a reason why a lot of campaigns kind of end at earlier levels. There's a reason why Baldur's Gate 3 only went to level 12, because once you start getting into these higher level things of being able to cast haste, fly, yeah, and be able to do it all in one turn like that with a Glyph of Warding, yeah, you can absolutely do some massively overpowered stuff all of a sudden. But keep in mind, if the players can do it, the DM can too. Oh yeah. No, there's all kinds of ways to break the game, and I think that's part of the fun. But it's also part of, I think, I don't know. It's part of the fun. Let's see here. A very strong blood mage. I'm sure they could figure out something to stop us. It would probably piss me off because I like DMs who, if their players find something. Yeah. They made a bunch of changes in the 2024 rules, but not everything got nerfed the way that I think a lot of people were expecting it to. Yeah. Anyway, man, I got so sidetracked there. This is such a fun conversation, guys. Talking through all the intricacies. I think I'm gonna pop on over to. This is one that should be coming up soon in the next session or two. The little woods area. I want it to feel like Twilight. I have a couple like lit areas in it. Ooh, I don't know if I know the new invisible rules. Tell me all about it. So it's a condition, yeah. I Roll20. I really like Roll20. I was having some issues with it earlier in the year, but basically since they got Jumpgate, I have run into almost no issues now. Every once in a while, it will show more of the map than I intended, but that's about it. Other than that, there are other ones. There's Owlbear Rodeo is a nice simple one if you like to just have your map and some tokens and you don't care about anything else. That's a one that all the information is stored in your cache in the history on the web browser. So that's like a real simple, easy one. And then there's other ones like Foundry, VTT, and I know there's a few others, including D&D Beyond has its own map. But Roll20 is the one that has a million things. So basically anything that you might want out of a D&D experience is on there, which means that it's the most complex as well. So if you don't want to deal with all that complexity, might be a bit of an issue. Yeah, go ahead and drop the link. I'll approve it here in a second. Incarnate is one of the more common ones. Let me read this real quick here. So this is the way I've always run invisibility as a condition. I don't know if that's something that you haven't, Chaos Fox. Interesting. I wonder, once again, if it's a homebrew rule that I just didn't realize was a homebrew rule. About essentially attacks against you always have disadvantage, you always have advantage. Even if the other character can see you, you have the invisibility condition, and therefore it still affects that way. So, or rather not see you, but if they know roughly where you are. But I'm not sure. I'll have to once again look it up, because it seems like there's some things that I've been doing homebrew stuff on that I thought was the actual rulings, but that's kind of how I found a few things work. Sorry, so Killer7Gamer. Maps. You're currently using Incarnate. Incarnate is one of the most common ones. That's one I see a lot of people use. I use Dungeon Draft. I like the fact that it has it's a one-time purchase, and then you have everything you need. And that's what the maps that you see on screen are. Like this right here is all made in Dungeon Draft. The flat check. DC 15. Gold meet 15. I'll have to take a look further into this. It looks like you're talking more about the hide action rather than just the invisibility rules. I'm still kind of like catching up with a lot of the new rules. But I will say that hide action in 2014 was pretty it felt like it was kind of up to you a little bit as the DM. You are invisible. Invisible doesn't just mean you're under the spell. Hidden, you are invisible. Oh, you know, I always considered invisible as essentially the same as the way the spell worked, but yeah. Condition. Conceal, detected attacks. Yeah. Pulling up invisible. I want to take a look at hiding. Let's see here. Hiding. So I don't know where the DC 15 is coming from that you're talking about. I can see it in start playing that it says that now it's just a DC 15, but taking a look in the player handbook, it says the Dungeon Master decides circumstances that are appropriate for hiding. When you hide, you take the hide action. That's all it seems to say about that. And then it was talking about the rules glossary under invisible. It has, yeah, when you roll initiative, you roll an advantage. If you're hidden, you aren't affected by any effects that require its targets to be seen unless the effect creator can see you somehow, and all your equipment is concealed, and attacks against you have disadvantage, and attack rolls have an advantage. Oh man, I mean, races are all fun. I feel like they all have like stereotypes that are common, that I like, and some that I don't. Honestly, I really like having orcs in my campaign that interact with the party positively. Orcs and goblins, really. Anytime those typically evil characters tend to do like pleasant or interesting positive things, finding ways that it still fits the lore but still feels different, I think is that's my favorite. Let's see, a DC 15 stealth check while heavily obscured or behind 3 cutters quarter. So I'm not finding that in the rules. Is that maybe in the DMG, or am I reading? Where are you finding the DC 15 stealth check? Chaos Fox. Kuotoa. Kuotoa are fun. I mean, there's a bunch of really fun creatures out there. Like Kuotoa, I really like Kenku, because it's always fun to just repeat back what people are saying around you, and maybe seeing if there's a way to just repeat certain words back, or just find a way to communicate. Kuotoa are fun. They're fish people. You can't go wrong with fish people. I have a friend who's running a campaign right now where they're pretty much all woodland creatures. So you have like a Haragon and all kinds of stuff like that. So there's a lot of fun things, and I feel like it depends on your playstyle and the campaign specifically that you are running as to what would be an amazing fun thing to include. Thank you, Chaos Fox. I'm sorry, I'm not finding it. Let's see here. Hide action. Oh, you know what? Here it is. I looked up hide earlier, and it's just said that it was up to your DM, but I see here now. The hide action, you try to conceal yourself. To do so, you must exceed a DC 15 stealth check while you are heavily obscured or behind 3/4 or total cover, and you must be out of your enemy's line of sight. If you can see a creature, you can discern whether it can see you. I agree. Having that be a flat roll feels a little not great. As the DM, I think it should be up to the perception of the characters, a passive perception. I've always kind of run it as passive perception +5 if you are in the middle of combat, or just passive perception if you're not, assuming that those creatures are actively scanning the battlefield. So if their passive perception is usually 15, then it would be a DC 20. But if you're heavily obscured behind 3/4 or total cover, you know, they're not going to be able to see quite as well. So I don't know. I haven't played enough people who hide often to know if that's going to be a net positive or a net negative. I feel like the only time that it makes sense to hide in combat, or rather only times, and I might be wrong, but the only times would be when your rogue is trying to get sneak attack, or your party's trying to run away. In which case, if the rogue's trying to get sneak attack, I think whatever way you can get your rogue to get sneak attack is a net positive. Rogues only scale with everybody else if they're getting sneak attack most of their turns. Otherwise, they fall behind other player classes. So I want to make sure that they feel like they are just as powerful as everybody else. They have to do a little creative thing to do it, which would be hiding, making that somewhat easy, especially for, like, for instance, I don't think my rogue and my party can literally fail that, because as a rogue they get no worries. I found it myself, but now everyone can find it too, on the player handbook, page 368 it looks like. Yeah, but like I think my rogue literally can't fail that, because they now have a 10 is the lowest they're allowed to roll because of, I can't remember the ability because I'm really bad with names of things. Reliable talent. My rogue's telling me right now. Yeah. So they have reliable talent, and they're going to get like a +10, +12 or whatever by the time they're at level 9 right now. And they literally wouldn't be able to roll under a 15, which means that in order, like, them making that a DC 15 means that the creators at Wizards of the Coast have decided they want to make sure that rogues can always hide. That as long as they get out of line of sight, they can always hide. I'll have to see if I like that. You hate that, and I understand, because it takes some creativity away. At that point, if they literally can't fail, then why not just say if they get around the corner, they automatically succeed. But I think it's important to understand why they did it and then figure out if you want to use it in your game, because the rules are just guidelines. You can change them if you want, as long as you and your party agree on it ahead of time so that no one's surprised. Why don't we use this rule? Do it. Change it. Do what works for you and your party. Killer7 Gamer says, in the campaign I just played, we kind of run it based on how easy they would be to be seen. Yeah. So if they're in full cover, it might be a DC of 10. If they're trying to hide like behind a box, it'd be like a DC of 20. Yeah. And I think leaving that up to your DM is probably the better rule. But I think that, especially with the 2024 rules, Wizards of the Coast were trying to make the game a little bit more accessible, a little bit easier for everyone to just run it. Taking that decision away from the DM and just making it a flat roll of 15 makes it so that new DMs don't have to figure out how difficult would that be. They can just say, it's 15. It's always 15. More experienced DMs, do what you think is best. Because if you're a good DM, it's going to be better for your party. Like, whatever you think is going to be better, whatever they think is going to be better, it's going to be the better option. And I think that's one of those rules that comes up at Session 0. Session 0 should be, in my opinion, every campaign should have a Session 0. Just a session where you, the DM, the players, everyone gets together and decides, okay, what homebrew rules are we doing? What's the feel of the campaign? What is everyone okay with? What are some, red lines that we're not going to cross? Stuff like that. Very important to get across before you start actually playing the game. Yes, summon minor elementals is going to be a problem. I was actually watching a video on that particular spell earlier today, and the people in that video basically said they are almost positive it's going to get nerfed in the next, whatever the next publication is. They're going to change the rules of that spell and say, actually, it's only going to be a +1 d8, not +2 for each level above, or something like that. Weapon juggling. Like Nick properties mixed with the dual weapon feat. To use your offhand weapon 3 times by dropping your offhand equipment. Another weapon as a free action. Yeah. So in my campaign, we have made the rule that you only get 1 free action. So if you have things that give you that you can do something as a free action, you get it once that turn. And then if something else you can do as a free action, you have to wait till your next turn to do it, or use a real action to do it. That's the way I've run those kinds of things, in order to avoid having something like weapon juggling, like you were saying, Chaos Fox. But once again, these are all homebrew rules, things that you have to talk to your party about at Session 0, or as things come up throughout the campaign, you go, ooh, it's the first time we've run into that. Do we want to run it the way it says in the book, or do we want to run it the way that we want to run it? And you might find that people in the party disagree with the DM, or vice versa. And, just use your best judgment. Hopefully you're all friends, or you're all trying to be friendly, at least. I don't believe in a big DM versus a player attitude. Everyone should be on the same page. Everyone is there to have fun, to be challenged, but to different degrees. It's fine, but rules work as written. Yeah, it works. And you're right. Once again, it's just all about discussing this stuff with your party. And I feel like in some ways, the new player handbook, the 2024 rules, have cleaned up some of those rules, and they've muddied the water in some other ones. But that's always going to be the case in a game that's full of this much creativity. Not in a campaign, but someone I know figured out how to do 278 d8s of damage in a single turn. Yeah, I'm not too surprised that they figured out how a loophole like that. Something that Chaos Fox and I have both said earlier in this chat was, if someone figures out some kind of crazy thing like that, I'll usually let them do it. Like, you did something creative, amazing, over the top. I let it happen. But we're gonna figure out, like, next session, it's not gonna work like that. And it might just be that particular combo is just not allowed, or like, hopefully we can find a much better, more creative reason for it not to happen again. But hey, if you figured out something crazy, cool, and creative, I don't want to stifle you. I was expecting Silvery Barbs to get an update too. Like, it needed to be a high-level spell. Yeah. Yeah. Silvery Barbs is one of those, like, most disliked by DMs, I know. And, you know, if a DM's using it against players, that's also going to be not fun. But I also know that although the new player handbook included a lot of spells that are in other materials, the Silvery Barbs is not in the original player handbook. It's not in Tasha's or Mordekaiser's or any of the those. It's in, I can't remember, I want to say Fitzbin's or something. So I got a feeling that's going to be coming up again whenever we get around to that. Let me look it up real quick. Silvery Barbs. It's in Strixhaven. So, you know, maybe whenever they come out with Strixhavens again, that'll get an update at that point. Or it'll come up in some other material. Or it'll be a spell that just goes away. Maybe they decided that they don't want to continue doing Silvery Barbs. I don't know. Counterspell got a big change, and I don't know how I feel about Counterspell in this new rules. I liked that Counterspell consumed the spell slot, and now it doesn't. I honestly, I don't know if I care about it being a attack roll versus a saving throw. The only thing that makes it a big difference between it being attack roll versus a saving throw is that a lot of, hey, a new follower, hey, Killer, oh, Killer7 Gamer, thank you. Oh, have a great night. Thanks for stopping in. But the big thing about Counterspell now being a saving throw versus an attack roll is that a lot of legendary monsters get legendary resistance, and that means that they can use that to just let their spell happen anyway. So that's the only thing about the new rules for Counterspell that I'm like, should I be able to just say, nah, it works? That and a lot of big monsters have high constitution, which means that their constitution saving throw is going to be real high. And, you know, any spellcaster is going to want to have high constitution because that's what you use for your concentration saving throws. So it's like, honestly, I haven't run into it in my game enough to develop a good opinion. At the moment, I just have an opinion. So, hey, Nate, thanks for following, Chaos Fox. Yeah, you know, that might be about all that I had planned for my session today. If there's any other burning questions you got for me, pop them on in the chat. We can see if we can go down another road here. Otherwise, I might be able to call it a night myself, and we'll see you all next week. So, let's see here. All right. Anyway, thank you all so much for coming. It was a pleasure chatting with you, Chaos Fox, Killer7 Gamer. I had a few people in there bringing up some awesome, amazing questions, conversation. Pop on here. I'm gonna plan on being here every my favorite world. I mean, I feel like they all have their own like positives and negatives when it comes to different kinds of worlds out there. I've homebrewed my own, which is probably nearest and dearest to my heart right now. That's Cormorel, where we have our campaign. But Forgotten Realms is the one that I kind of grew up on as a DM. So the Sword Coast, Forgotten Realms, that's my go-to. If I just want to just jump in and go to a world in the D&D world, it's Forgotten Realms. But I feel like it's a classic. You can't go wrong with the classics. They're a classic for a reason. Anyway, got our campaign going tomorrow night, 7 o'clock right here again, Pacific Standard. And then every Monday for I want to say at least the next month, I'll be here to chat it up with you all. So pop on back next Monday and we'll see you then. So you all have a fantastic night. Thanks so much for coming in. We'll see you next time.